Hey everyone, and welcome to Risky Business. My name's Patrick Gray. This week's show is brought to you by Sublime Security, and we'll be hearing from Josh Camdew a little bit later about the spate of calendar invite phishing that's going around and how that is actually kind of a complicated problem to deal with if you're an email security provider. Interesting topic, actually, even though it's like low-level, stupid, but at high volume stuff, like dealing with it is a pain. So Josh will be with us a little bit later on to talk through all of that. It's been a hard week for us Aussies with everything that's happened in Bondi. Our thoughts, our hearts go out to everybody in Sydney who's been affected by the horrible massacre that happened at Bondi Beach. If I was just going to say one thing about that, I would say that as much as it's been a dark week, there's an awful lot to be proud of there as well. Everything from the way surf lifesavers pulled people to safety, placing themselves at risk, the way that civilians were able to disarm these attackers, the way that the police were able to take these guys out in 4.5 minutes for the first one and completely taken out after 6 minutes with pistols facing down people with shotguns and rifles, showing just incredible bravery. There is so much to be proud of. So as much as it's been a very dark period, I think it's important that we don't lose sight of that aspect of this as well, which is that it could have been a lot worse and everybody did what they were supposed to do. But look, heavy enough, right? So we're going to move on and get into this week's news. I just felt I had to say something there. But Adam, let's talk about the cybers, right? Because the cybers are a lot more fun than all of that. And first of all, a quick update on the React 2 shell stuff. Every APT crew on the planet apparently jumping in on the action there. We've got even the Iranians are jumping in on this one. And it looks like they're grabbing cloud service credentials seems to be what people are after here, not so much shells.
Yeah, we've seen, I think Microsoft did a write-up of a number of campaigns they've seen, and there's people deploying proxy networks, there's people deploying, regular rootkits and shells for access, and yeah, stealing cloud credentials. I guess that indicates, that's what people want these days, is to pivot onwards into all the cloud properties. But yeah, this is kind of as we expected, CVSS, 10 out of 10, no auth bug. Of course, it's going to go big.
Yeah. And meanwhile, a couple more bugs like we said last week, right? Which we said last week, now that there's been one big bug in this stuff, other people are going to have a look and stuff will undoubtedly fall out. We've already seen a couple more. I think there's a memleak and a DOS condition here that are, not particularly high impact, but kind of funny because they were found very, very quickly.
Yeah. One of them is like a straight up denial of service by putting it into an infinite loop is not really what you want. And yeah, another thing was a source code disclosure one where you can get the server-side JavaScript source code, which is useful for finding other bugs and maybe credentials and tokens and things. So yeah, people who are out there patching, have just discovered that they run React server components and are patching them. They're going to be patching again. But yes, as you said, this is what we expect to happen, once someone finds a bug and everyone else starts piling on.
Yeah, I think Andrew McPherson, ex-Multigo, actually found those. So nicely done, Andrew. Now, let's move on to that technique that I was talking about just at the intro there, consent fix, right? So click fix has become this, somehow, has become a big thing, right? And this is where people, it's the clipboard thing where the attacker puts something on your clipboard and then they tell people, oh, you got to pay, you got to go to the start bar and like run it as a command and whatever and paste and off you go. And look, people are still doing it, so it clearly works, right? So now let's talk about consent fix, which is kind of a similar thing, but it doesn't touch the endpoint. It's all in browser. The reason we know about this is because Push Security, and full disclosure, they're a sponsor of the show, and I'm an advisor to them. I've got share options in them and whatever, but that's not why we are talking about it. We're talking about it because this is actually very, very cool. The only reason we know about this is because finally we've got some companies making like browser telemetry products that can see these sorts of things. And man, they found a good one here. John Hammond too, who's the security YouTube guy. He's got like 2 million subscribers. He did a long video on this too, which is awesome. And we've linked through to it in the show notes. But walk us through this technique, because like it's this odd combo between being really, really dumb and really, really smart in a way that you don't see very often, right?
Well, the old classic, it ain't dumb if it works. But yeah, this is It's really clever. So the deal here is you're browsing the web, and the site that you're visiting will prompt you to authenticate an OAuth application in your Microsoft account, and the application it prompts you to add is the Azure CLI, so the command line interface for talking into Azure. And this is an OAuth app that's kind of enabled by default for all tenancies. And the process of authenticating an OAuth app like this one, the way that it is intended to work is that you go to Microsoft, you say you want to enroll in this application, and once you've authenticated and kind of consented to the application, to give the necessary kind of key material back to the Azure CLI, your browser then makes a callback to localhost. And in the normal flow, the Microsoft authentication libraries that you would use for this spin up a listener to catch that particular request. And then that gives it the necessary key material to go off and issue a longer term token for access to your account with the Azure CLI. If you don't have Azure CLI and it didn't initiate this request, there is of course no listener on localhost. And so in the attack, the browser triggers this process. Your browser gets redirected to localhost, and of course localhost isn't there, and you get an error from your browser that says, error 404, or, page not found, or whatever else. The attackers convince the victim to copy paste the URL of this error message, which contains the key material in a get parameter, and give it to the attacker. And so it's kind of similar to click fix in that you're social engineering the user, that you've got a problem, and to fix it, you need to copy paste this particular piece of information. And then the attackers can use this to register the Azure CLI app into your account from their machine. So then they've got a long-term access token, and they can make Azure CLI requests into, whatever endpoint at Microsoft that is. And that's functionally equivalent to giving them your whole Microsoft 365 account in terms of what it can do, which makes the attackers very happy. And it's a really fun kind of little trick. And I don't know why it wouldn't work. And indeed, according to Push, they've seen it being used in the wild. So clearly it does.
Yeah, so I think basically the way this went down is they saw some weird behavior targeting one of their customers, and started, stepping it back, and wound up with a DAFUQ kind of moment looking at this stuff. And then it was a little bit to unpack too, because the attackers here were using compromised websites, right? They would add some JavaScript to compromised websites that would pop up this fake Cloudflare turnstile that asked for your email address. And if you weren't one of the whitelisted domains that they were targeting, you would never see the payload again, right? So whoever was doing this was actually doing it in a way to try to avoid detection. It didn't work in this case. But I mean, it's just like, I love this, right? You're getting people to cut and paste a localhost URL to complete a made up login process, which seems like a weird thing to a typical user. I'm going to imagine it seems like a weird thing to a typical user, but even one that's like maybe a little bit computer minded wouldn't necessarily think that giving up a URL, if there's a problem, if it's showing you an error, just copy that URL and paste it here. Like, that might actually make sense to them, right? So, and then from there, yeah, you could use that keymat from wherever in the world just to have that command line access into that user account. And if that user account is privileged, I'd imagine there's quite a lot you can do there, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you land on a privileged account, like an Azure privileged account, then oh boy, yeah, you're in for a great time, because that's equivalent to access to their account and onwards to great victory. And the normal controls that people would have in place around this, because by comparison to regular OAuth consent phishing, the attacker creates a malicious OAuth app which redirects back to the attacker. And that OAuth app has to be authorized into the account to start with by the administrator, because we went from anyone can add any OAuth app whatsoever to the Microsoft world to now these days, because of that OAuth consent phishing, most places have admin controls as to what OAuth apps are going to be permitted. But in this case, Microsoft has provided the sort of malicious app in this in this scenario,
yeah,
and it's pre-approved, and its redirect behavior during the auth flow just happens to be a thing that the attacker has figured out a way to leverage. Now, if the attacker was in a position to catch that localhost request some other way, other malware, or there was a piece of enterprise crapware that happens to have advantageous behavior for the attacker, maybe there are other avenues to go down this road. But like just straight up socialing the user to do it honestly, makes a lot of sense. And, my hat is off to them.
Your FIDO keys aren't going to do anything to stop this as well. I mean, that's the thing that I find most interesting here is that you would think, okay, well, we got phishing resistant MFA. We're good. No.
We knew we're not good.
Yeah, we are definitely not good.
That's the great thing, right? That now that we're making phishing kind of a much less, like phishing for credentials, a much less straightforward thing. Attackers are forced to do some actual novel research now, and I'm totally here for novel research. And this is, it's just great lateral thinking. I love it.
Yeah, life finds a way, as they say. So yeah, we've linked through the write-ups there, but I'm like, this Azure CLI thing, I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is like cloud bash. Like, what is this? It's like, oh man, cloud bash. What a world. Now look, let's have a quick chat about all of the goings on in the United States when it comes to trying to find people to run NSA. Both the head of NSA, director NSA, and deputy director. Laura Loomer keeps getting in the way of this process, man, and it's both serious and kind of funny. I mean, it's just like you kind of do have to laugh about this, right? Because we had this situation where Tim Hogg and deputy, I can't remember her name, got canned because they were part of the deep state or something, according to Laura Loomer, who claims it. Yeah, I got them canned. And now there's been people in the acting jobs ever since. Then there was a number 2 that got announced for the job, but Loomer decided she didn't like him either. This is for the deputy director position. So this is Joe Francescan, who was announced in August as the next deputy NSA director. Then we've got a report here from The Record that said the administration was going to name Tim Kasiba, who formerly held senior roles at NSA and FBI. But then Laura Loomer has taken to X to talk about how the Record story is wrong and there's no way this guy's going to get the job because he's too cozy with the deep state Trump-hating Democrats, right? And then when you look at her, what she describes as her receipts of this guy's disloyalty to Trump, it's stuff like him wishing Tim Hogg all the best after he's left NSA on LinkedIn. This is the scandalous content that apparently disqualifies him from a senior position under the Trump admin.
And platitudes on LinkedIn, that's all it takes, apparently. Yeah, which it's just bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. And how long into this administration are we? And there's still no one at the head of America's cyber and spy agency. Like, it's just at a time when this is really quite important, and yet here we are, because this guy said nice things on LinkedIn. Like, it's just, either of these guys, right, have been said nice things on LinkedIn, or did something to offend her delicate sensibilities. It's just bonkers.
I don't think she has delicate sensibilities. I think she has spiky, nasty sensibilities, actually, mate. But meanwhile, apparently that's the deputy director position. Apparently there is someone in the frame for the director position, which is going to be this guy, Army Lieutenant General Joshua Rudd, who is the deputy chief of the US Indo-Pacific Command. But it doesn't look like he has actually any experience in cyber. Now, I'm not sure how much that necessarily matters when the director job really is, as I understand it, you're sort of managing upwards to Congress and whatnot, and it's a big organization, and it's running it like any other big organization. I think the deputy director role, as I understand it, is much more about managing down into the organization. But you do wonder on what the criteria were in selecting this guy, who obviously I know absolutely nothing about. We've got a great quote in here from Senator Mark Warner, who said that he looks forward to, where is it? I got the quote here. Looks forward to evaluating his qualifications to lead the NSA and US Cyber Command at a moment of unprecedented cyber and national security threats. That was, Mark Warner, Senator Mark Warner. So, it's a bit of a clown show over there right now, isn't it?
It's a clown show. And I feel bad for clowns even. That's how bad it is over there. What a mess.
And meanwhile, there's a story going around in Bloomberg that says that the soon-to-be released cybersecurity strategy is going to outline a bunch of ways in which the private sector is going to do offensive cyber. I'd be a little bit cautious about accepting that story as fact. It hasn't stopped everyone from talking about it an awful lot. It's been social media fodder over the last few days, big time. And we do know that the admin over there has been kicking around ideas about getting private companies involved in those sort of activities. But I think we should wait for the strategy to actually be released before we start talking about it as if this is in it.
Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. I mean, Bloomberg's track record has not been super spectacular when they are, of course, responsible for that grain of rice Chinese backdoor story back in the day as well. So, yeah, not always the most reliable source.
Yeah, so let's just see how that happens. Now, this one's fun. This one is fun because we are not sure what to make of it. There has been some sort of cyber attack, maybe a wiper attack, maybe a ransomware attack against the Venezuelan state oil firm, PDV, which has, depending on who you listen to, has been contained or has ground their operations down to a halt. Now, the obvious question here is the Venezuelans are blaming the Americans and saying it's an attack from Americans. But, you sort of get the impression they would say that anyway, right? Even if it was an attack from a Russian ransomware crew or a bunch of pro-democracy hacktivists, they're always going to blame the Americans because it suits their political interests. But in this case, you kind of do wonder if it was the Americans.
You do kind of wonder. I mean, given the situation, the relationship between Venezuela and the US at the moment, you do kind of wonder. And you could totally imagine the American administration deciding to add some cyber to the mix, and oil is super important for Venezuela's economy. And doing it under the cover of a ransomware operation, also a totally, a thing that could happen. Seems believable. But yeah, it also absolutely could just be regular common garden. Everyone gets ransomware. Like, this is just normal having computers on the internet kind of thing. We just don't know. But
it does. I mean, it feels Trumpy, right? It feels Trumpy.
It smells Trumpy. I agree. Yeah. I agree. It smells like it. But
it is kind of the cyber equivalent of blowing up a speedboat. You know what I mean? It just.
I mean, they seized an oil tanker, right? So yeah, we did see some reporting. I think it was was it Reuters that were reporting that a bunch of oil tankers that ship oil for this organization have either gone dark on their tracking, like turned it off, or have tankers that are inbound to pick up cargoes have turned around because of the uncertainty. So if the intent was to disrupt oil exports out of Venezuela, depending on the reporting you read, plausibly mission accomplished. So yeah, it's just it smells.
Well, and all of these things. Yeah, all of these things taken together, right, with the tanker seizure and this, you would sort of think, it does feel a little bit more than a coincidence, you would think.
Yeah, you kind of do. But, it absolutely also could just be, ransomware. We don't know. We don't know.
What is it? Sometimes it's just a chocolate bar, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, let's contrast that operation, which may or may not be, a US cyber operation. Let's contrast that to what the Russians have been up to. And man, flinging money at hacktivists, right? Flinging money towards hacktivists to just randomly pop shells and try to wreak havoc and not really doing anything except annoying people. And now we've got someone, what's this, a Ukrainian national, Victoria Edwardovna Dubranova, 33 years old, also known as Vika, Tori, and Sova Sonia. She has been extradited to the United States and is facing up to 99 years in prison for her role in a bunch of this activity. But it's when you read this activity that you just think, why is the Russian state giving money to this group to do this sort of stuff? What is even the point of it?
Yeah, no, you really do end up wondering that, because some of the examples of attacks this lot have carried out, some of it's denial of service stuff, some of it's breaking into things, and we've seen initially you see reports that are broke into water treatment facilities and adjusted chlorine levels in a children's water park, and things that sound opportunistic but serious. And then when you start to see some more of the details, and some are detailed in this indictment, it's something like attacking a car wash in Florida, or attacking. I think it turned out that the children's water park in the Netherlands turned out to be a fountain. Like not exactly like chlorinated pools that might poison children. No, it's a fountain. They adjusted the water level in a fountain.
Birds drinking from that fountain may have felt under the weather briefly, though.
They may have had to go further down into the pond to get their water. So, like, it's kind of rubbish. I mean, I guess they must have done some things that did cause genuine inconvenience, but as a state-funded, because the allegation is that these groups are being funded by the GRU, Russian military intelligence. But yeah, as a tool of state power, I don't feel that particularly overwhelmed by it.
Well, dude, in November 2024, they attacked a meat processing facility in Los Angeles and spoiled thousands of pounds of meat and caused an ammonia leak at the facility.
Well, that's at least a little more serious than a children's fountain. But this is not the cyber war we were promised. And I know, like over on between two nerds, Tom and the Grok are often talking about how cyber really is not actually very effective at expressing state power. And this is a great example of it just being total trash.
Yeah, and I'd highly recommend too. Funnily enough, I think some of the best coverage of this has come from the VX Underground, the VX Underground Twitter feed, where they wrote up a bunch of details on the indictment when it first landed. And what did they say? Like looking at the guy's car wash got messed with. Like they messed with his car wash settings in Florida. You just think, what? Now look, too, also speaking about Between Two Nerds, this week's episode is a must listen. In my mind, it was actually labeled Between Three Nerds. So that's Tom Uren, our colleague, the Grok, and a guy called Hamid Kashfi, who is talking about the evolution of Iranian APT groups. And not only is it a very interesting conversation, it's also quite funny. So I would recommend that people check that out. I know you enjoyed that one as well.
Yeah. No, I definitely enjoyed watching that one. I watched the YouTube version. And it's a funny episode, but also like legitimately educational. Like I learned a bunch about Iranian cyber activity. Definitely worth it.
I mean, it starts off with the wonderful knowledge that quite often some of these Iranian APT crews love to get detected and love to make headlines because it's actually really good for them internally. It gets them noticed by the bosses, right? So, and getting doxed and stuff, like, fantastic. You're notorious. Like, whoops, did I accidentally just expose my IP? Oh, no. But look, there's a whole bunch more Russian activity to talk about this week. The German parliament got DDoSed during a visit from Vladimir Zelensky. And you just sort of think, what's the point of this?
Yeah, exactly. It's not particularly clear. It looks like maybe their email systems had some outage. There was some local reporting that suggested that maybe it wasn't cyber, maybe it was just regular common garden incompetence, which it can be a little hard to tell these days. But yeah, we did see the Germans summoning the Russian ambassador to protest about Russian attacks on the companies behind air traffic control in Germany. So there is definitely a focus, and having Zelensky there, walking around and having photo ops with German politicians, I cannot imagine made the Russians happy, and it would be entirely believable for them to go throw a DDoS, as a petulant punishment for that.
Yeah, have a little tanty, basically. Now, we got one here from Krebs on Security, which says that most parked domains now are now serving malicious content. Now, what does he mean by malicious content? Because that's a pretty broad brush.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of things there. There's things that are trying to drop scareware on you, things that are sending you onwards to, more sophisticated attack, browser exploitation and things. Some of the things we've seen that he writes up here are, often these ads or content on these sites will send you off through a bunch of redirectors that are going to kind of assess your interest the level of interest the attackers have in you, and then send you to different kind of grades of attack, or scams or malware or whatever else, depending on how interesting that you are. So that's kind of makes sense, I suppose. The thing that stood out to me in this story, though, was something like, according to, I think it was research from Infoblox, 90% of visits to a park domain is going to end up in some kind of nasty content, but that varies wildly depending on whether you come from a residential IP address or not. If you're coming from a VPN or the sort of like a cloud service where like a scanning operator might be running out of, you tend to get redirected to much more benign content. So that kind of shows a degree of sophistication there. There was one other point, though, that Brian made, which was that the quality of, or like the maliciousness of content on parked sites got significantly worse early this year when Google turned off default targeting of Google AdWords. So like Google's AdSense platform used to serve ad content on park domains by default. They turned it off, and now it's opt-in only, and that has meant that there's way less advertising there, so it's much cheaper for people to go and put on more malicious content, lower quality advertising, that kind of thing. So like by those things combined, park domains have become a much even more of a cesspool than they already were.
So I mean, you could bit flip, a cosmic ray could hit your computer, bit flip you wind up on the wrong domain, it's parked, and whammo.
Yeah, basically, yeah. That's it's a great time and a good reminder to make sure you patch your browser, because a drive-by from just a typo, not really what you want. No,
not a good time. Now, what do we got here? Oh, yes, perverts everywhere. Repent, because Pornhub, apparently a third-party supplier to Pornhub, got owned, and a whole bunch of data on their premium members got leaked, and this includes stuff like their search history. And I'm guessing if you're the sort of person who pays for a Pornhub subscription, it's going to be a pretty exotic sort of collection of keywords, you would think, that you probably don't want associated with your email address. I mean, this is, I saw someone on Twitter describe this as Ashley Madison, but the Ashley Madison hack, but for Zoomers, which I think is probably about right. But I mean, this is bad. This is really bad.
Yeah, so this is Shiny Hunters breached Mixpanel, which is a third-party data analytics provider, and Pornhub apparently was one of their customers. Pornhub actually came out and said that they stopped using Mixpanel back in 2021, and so therefore the data is probably a few years out of date. On the other hand, Mixpanel have said that the Pornhub data didn't come from them and it must have come from somewhere else. So there's a bit of like, he said, she said, she said, back and forth between the two. But the net result seems to be that Shiny Hunters have the data. They're attempting to ransom Pornhub to pay them to not release it. They have shared some of it with Bleeping Computer to kind of prove its provenance and so on. And Bleeping Computer seems convinced that it is in fact the genuine article. And watch histories and search histories, or search terms, is probably, as you said, not a thing that a premium user of Pornhub probably wants out there. And I feel like Pornhub's not going to pay Shiny Hunters, and this data's going to come out. Probably, even if they did pay, Shiny Hunters will probably release it for the lulz anyway. So probably not a great time to be a premium subscriber, although Pornhub is trying to say that it's a subset of customers and so on, all the usual sorts of things that you get from people who've had their data stolen.
Yeah, it's this one is a bit worrying, I think. Do you know what I mean? Because it is the sort of thing where you might be exposing somebody's sexuality in that data set, that, they might be in the closet or something like it's got a lot of potential to cause people serious distress, right? Yeah. So I'm making jokes about it at the start, but, just like the Ashley Madison data leak, there were suicides linked to that. You sort of wonder if the same thing could happen here. So I think this could become, depending on how it plays out, it could be, a leak with those sort of real world impacts. And the two others that I think of are Ashley Madison and then the Vastamo, psychotherapy clinics data set release. People shouldn't touch this sort of stuff. It's dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, the potential for consequences, like real world actual consequences, are pretty significant. And it doesn't feel good to have your data stolen at the best of times, but even worse when it's, kind of private or intimate or sensitive like this.
Yeah. So I kid the perverts, but also, this is a serious incident, and let's hope it just goes away. And it's just they said we didn't really have the data; we only had what we gave to Bleeping Computer, and the whole thing's just a laugh. The end. That would be great. Now we got this absolutely wild piece here, man. Holy dooly! This former employee of Accenture, Danielle Hilmer, 53, of Chantilly, Virginia. She's being targeted with wire fraud and stuff for basically lying to the US federal government about whether or not lying about a product being sort of FedRAMP compliant when it wasn't. And you just sort of think, which salesperson doesn't lie about their FedRAMP compliance, right? And she's facing 20 years in prison. This is a crazy indictment. I mean, we love to see the wicked punished, but I got to be honest, I'm reading this and my jaw hit the floor. Your reaction was similar, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how many salespeople only tell the full truth, and don't exaggerate or leave things out or whatever else. It's just, it's wild. And the charges really stack up. I mean, there's some for wire fraud, there's some for government fraud, there's some counts of obstruction of federal audit. Apparently at some point she was involved in obstructing some auditors that were attempting to, look at the products or services that they were selling. It's pretty wild. And, if she ends up going down for this, remember how much we talked about, the chilling effect of, on CISOs of, the SEC or whatever it was a while ago back, was it the Uber guy or was one of the
Joe Sullivan, yeah.
Joe Sullivan, yes. Imagine there was so much the chilling effect it's going to have on CISOs and blah, blah, blah. This is going to have a chilling effect. If you're going down 30-year federal charges for lying about FedRAMP compliance, yeah, that's real chilling effect right there. Sales going to grind to a halt. No one's going to be getting their bonuses.
How quickly can we engineer an on-prem version of our solution? Is the takeaway question from this one? Because honestly, that is an easy, unless you have to do FedRAMP, you don't want to do FedRAMP. And that is the easiest way around it, is just we got an on-prem thing. We stick it in a container. You don't need to worry about FedRAMP, because it's a shocker. It's a horrible process to go through. And, I don't recommend lying about it and concealing things from the auditors here. It did remind me a little bit of the Joe Sullivan thing, actually, now that you mention it, because, I think one of the key allegations here is that they were actively concealing and lying and, ducking and weaving, which were some of the allegations against Sullivan too at the time. Well, I guess his was more, no, they did allege that he concealed stuff, but I think his was more grey area, failed to report sort of thing. Anyway, That one's all over. Let's not reopen that one. We got some good news here, which is Microsoft is finally killing RC4.
Yes. Killing is a strong word, I suppose. They are disabling by default the use of RC4 in Windows Active Directory, and in particular as a response to it being kind of a key part of the Kerberos attack flow, where you can kind of steal credentials as any domain user. They've been trying to kill this off for a long time, because, having to use RC4 in a world where we've got AES support, have had AES support since Windows, I think 2003, Windows Server 2003 is where they, is the system where that only supported RC4, so things of that vintage, it's been a while, and Microsoft has been working hard to try and make it go away. The main reason it's stuck around is that some third-party implementations, things that interop with the Active Directory, don't particularly work well, plus, old versions of Windows. But yes, Microsoft's going to turn it off by default. If you want to keep using it, you can, but, kind of at your own risk. Microsoft's also introduced some better logging so that you can discover clients in your environment that don't support RC4 that don't support AES, or have it misconfigured for some reason so that it can't, to try and help you, figure out the little bits of edge cases. They're also asking for details of any third-party solutions that only work with RC4. So they've done the work, and I guess some Windows admins next year, when they start to roll out this change, will discover what things no longer work in their environment with RC4.
That's right. Now it's time for our last news story of the week, Adam. One of my favorites. Very, very funny. Very, very good. We love kicking F5. When they're down, you're thinking about all of the problems with F5 and you think, well, why don't you go to a competing technology, right? And one of the competing technologies there comes from Traefik, Traefik. Traefik does cloud native reverse proxies and ingress controllers. It's got 60,000 GitHub stars, 3 billion downloads. It can do all your SSL termination and, TLS termination, all of that good stuff. But their ingress controller for Kubernetes has a bug in it that is just so funny. Like, it is so funny. Please walk us through. Like, this is a pure, proper comedy bug. I mean, I don't think anyone's actually exploited this in the wild, but like, it's just so funny.
It's comedy, yes. So if you're using Traefik in your Kubernetes environment and you were migrating from using Nginx in the same role, the thing that parses your Nginx config and then generates appropriate Traefik config to replace it had a little bit of a boo-boo. And the boo-boo was when you had a setting in your Nginx version which said, hey, I'd really quite like to verify that the SSL certificates involved are valid, it would translate that into a new configuration, which was the opposite. Please do not verify any TLS certificates. And so this has been about 6 months that the setting has been reversed, where, certificate validation on ended up with certificate validation equals off. So that's a little bit awkward. And as you say, in the modern world, relying on TLS certificate verification is pretty important. And having that setting just be backwards for 6 months and no one noticed is pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, well, someone did notice, but they were using some sort of automated code scanning tool or something and just throwing it at various code bases. And that's how this got found, which I think is kind of a win, right?
Yeah, I think this is one of these, it's a firm that's doing a bunch of AI stuff, and indeed their write-up feels very written by an LLM. There's some stuff that just has that LLM sniff to it, but the bug's legit. So regardless of how they found it, whether it was humans, whether it was computers, whether it was both, we are still laughing at a very real bug. So yeah, good work.
Yeah, that's right. By off, we mean on, and on we mean off, just like total inversion. Now, look, just before we wrap it up, that's actually it for the week's news. But before we wrap it up, I just want to send a special shout out to a friend of the show, Mr. Dylan O'Donnell. Dylan helped, he's a friend of mine from my local area. We often, I think I've mentioned on the show once before that I go and get dinner with a bunch of friends once a week. We all eat a steak. He's one of my steak buddies. He also did the CSS for the Risky Business website when we relaunched a while ago. So, we took the design and Dylan was one of the people who, Dylan and you basically developed our new website, and he got added into our Slack. And when that project was done, we didn't get rid of him. So he's sort of like Risky Business, Riskyverse auxiliary, and a good mate, really good friend of mine. And Dylan was just diagnosed with esophageal cancer, unfortunately, and he's beginning chemo this week. And Dylan, I know you listen to the show, mate, and just wanted to wish you all the best with that. And some people might know his name because he actually operates a very popular astronomy YouTube channel with, I think over 50,000 subscribers. He's got his jumbo telescope in his dome in his backyard and takes some pretty amazing photos. So Dylan, we're all thinking of you, mate. And, let's hope that chemo just goes in and nukes those little things in you. And, that'll be a good result. But Adam, that is it for the week's news. That is it for Risky Business for 2025. Mate, thank you so much for everything over the whole year. It's been a lot of fun. We've had so much fun this year, and I think next year is going to be even better, mate. So thanks again, and I'll catch you in 2026.
Yeah, thanks very much, Pat. It's we're going into the 20th year for you next year. That's a hell of a lot of risky business, and I'm looking forward to coming back. And
20 years.
All of this, 20 years, all of this again next year. Thanks very much, Pat.
That was Adam Boileau there with a check of the week's security news. Big thanks to him for that. It is time for this week's sponsor interview now with Josh Kamju, who is the chief executive and co-founder of Sublime Security, which is a email security company. So they've got a really cool email security platform. It's very AI heavy these days, but not in a dumb way. It works actually quite well because they actually built a product that just happened to be well suited to have AI bolted onto it later. But we're not talking about AI in this interview. What we're talking about is phishing crews are going absolutely wild with trying to spam people with calendar invitations, mostly ICS format, getting these calendar invitations into people's calendars so that with phone numbers in them saying call this number, and then the targets will actually ring the number and get talked through installing malicious software onto their systems, and then the attackers get access from there. Now, the reason this is interesting from an email security provider point of view is twofold, right? First of all, sometimes that email will come in, it gets detected and removed from the inbox, but the calendar entry doesn't, right? So Sublime have had to work out new features for their platform where they can actually reach in and remove these calendar entries. So you'll hear Josh talk about that. And the other thing that's interesting is that between two tenants in the same provider, like Gmail to Gmail or O365 to O365, you can actually do calendar invitations without involving email at all through various mysterious undocumented APIs, as is the way in 2025. So yeah, there's a bunch of interesting stuff to talk about here. So here is Josh Kamju talking about how the bad guys are using ICS phishing. Enjoy.
What we're seeing most by volume is what we call callback phishing, or some folks call it TOADS, which stands for telephone oriented attack delivery.
That's a hell of a backronym. I mean, hat tip to whoever came up with that one.
That is, which everyone has seen these. Like the traditional one is your Norton antivirus has expired, and you need to call this number you need to call the help desk or customer support in order to renew your antivirus. Like there's lots of different themes, but that's the general attack delivery mechanism. It's a phone number that the end user calls, which is quite clever because they end up getting on the phone with a scammer, and they direct them to go and download. Usually, it's malware is what they have them go download. It's like a rat. Sometimes it's like legitimate remote software tooling that help desk or IT will use, but then they do lots of nefarious things once they get access.
So it's less about like give us your credit card number to renew your subscription, and more about like, here, download this tool, and then onwards they go from there.
Yes. Yeah. That's generally the intent behind callback phishing, and that's not a new attack type. It's been happening for years, and we've got we've written a lot about that on our blog and whatnot. So that's by volume what we see the most in terms of what they're trying to deliver. But the second most is what you alluded to, which is credential phishing attacks. So there's a link it is a link embedded in the calendar invite that will take them to a credential phishing page, and it'll try and steal your Microsoft credentials or whatever credentials they might be interested in.
Now, you mentioned that, most of these ICS invites, they turn up via email. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see them, but you're an API-based product. Most of the time, you're deployed as an API-based product. So you'll see it after it's delivered and go, whoop, remove that from the inbox. But then there was this issue where, well, because you didn't stop it from actually hitting the inbox, it's created that calendar event. And as an email provider, like previously, you couldn't actually then go and remove that bad calendar invite. I mean, it appears in the calendar, it's not accepted, but it's there. I mean, we've all seen how that works. So now you've actually had to go and develop a feature to go and remove those invites from people's calendars, right?
It's actually an issue that's plagued. The reason this has become such a talked about topic recently is that it impacted both API solutions and email gateways, because there's multiple ways of delivering calendar invites.
Well, I was going to go there next, right? Which is that, through this, like if you're inviting someone who's a Microsoft user from another Microsoft tenant, you could do that without email.
That's right.
Is that how most people are doing it, or is most of it coming still via email?
We're seeing the vast majority includes an email, because it actually gives them two opportunities to deliver the attack. One, like to get the user to engage. It's basically like two attacks in one. If they miss if the user doesn't read the email, then maybe they'll read the calendar invite. And so what we built was a way to actually access the calendar and remediate the attacks on the calendar. So we released this a couple weeks ago, and we were always able to detect and block the attack in the inbox, but no email solution has had any access to remediating events on the calendar, which is why it's become such a big problem. So we built that integration, and now when we can do both, so we can clean those up as well.
Yeah, so my next question is really about, like, what are you doing about the ones that are delivered without email? Are you actually in a position to detect those as well now because you've built this integration, or are they still a bit of a blind spot for solutions like yours?
So those are the toughest ones right now, because the way that the email provider, it happens all within, there's like some protocol that it's not public. It's all happens internally within.
Yeah, it all happens in the background.
Microsoft.
It's not. There's no SMTP involved.
Exactly.
It's just like magically a calendar invite arrives out of the ether, right?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So there's a couple things with both of these attacks. The easiest, like the most straightforward solution. Obviously, there's trade-offs to this. Is that you can change your default settings for calendar invite. For how your email provider actually adds invites to your calendar. So in Google and Microsoft, there's a setting which by default defaults to an on, is that any recipient, even if you've never spoken to them before, can send you an invite and get it auto added to the calendar. And so in Google, you actually have some amount of fine-grained control over this, where there's a couple different settings. You can say, one, if it's an untrusted sender is what they call it, which is someone you've never communicated before, or you could just not allow it at all, and then you have to accept the invite. So if you've got that setting turned off, then the email provider will actually force an email to be sent. So
which is what they should be doing in the first place.
Which is how it should happen. Yeah, exactly.
So when you turn that off, it will actually force an email to actually arrive in the inbox. So It's not like you're gonna get people trying to send you a calendar invite through this non-SMTP mechanism, and it will just disappear.
It won't work. Yeah, exactly.
It won't work, or it will generate an email, and that's how the invite gets sent.
It generates an email. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah. It forces the attacker to actually send an email in that case.
Yeah. I mean, it's less good though, right? Because when I think about how my calendar flows work,
exactly,
you know what I mean? Like, I like to be able to see those like grayed out appointments on my calendar and go, oh, what's this? Oh, I haven't accepted that. Click OK, right?
That's the big trade-off, and why a lot of our customers have not actually changed that setting is because it's an impact to productivity. It really is, and convenience and all these things. And so there is real impact to the end user experience, which is a legitimate consideration, right? And so
I mean, the obvious solution here is for the email providers, when they add something to a calendar through this non-SMTP method, to generate an email anyway. Yes. That
gives the correlation that makes detection and prevention much easier. The other thing that we're doing, for really, this is more so for the broader community, is that we're open sourcing a playbook. Basically, it's going to be like a series of like API integrations, so that you can, even if you're not using Sublime, and we've got Sublime runs, you can run Sublime Core is free for the community, but even for some organizations, like, it's hard to get approval for that. So what we're doing is because it's such a problem right now, we're building and open sourcing a tool to allow teams to be able to remediate calendar invites in either scenario. So, like, even if you've got, whether it's email delivered or not, and whether you're using Sublime or not.
So how are you actually determining whether or not a calendar invite is malicious if it didn't generate an email, like if it just appeared on someone's calendar?
So if it's just appearing on the calendar, then what you would have to do is you basically take the ICS, basically the format of the calendar invite, and the simplest thing that we could do is turn that into like a mock email and then pass it through our detection pipeline. That's like, and then be able to analyze it. And
that'll have a look at the URLs and whatever and give you a, yeah.
Yeah, but for IR teams that are just, because a lot of the pain right now is actually just there's a lot of attacks getting through that they have no ability to actually go and clean up. It's very difficult to go and clean up, and a lot of times you actually know what you need to go and clean up. So what we're open sourcing, you can just like give it a message ID, or you tell it where to go, and it'll go and clean it up for everyone. So yeah, that should be coming soon. But the thing that we built and released within the platform is actually really slick, because there's nothing that you have to do. It all just automatically, if we detect an attack, we will automatically go and also clean up the calendar invite. There's nothing more that you have to do.
Yeah, it's just those ones that are not generating emails that are still going to be a problem, right?
Yeah. And so we're cooking up some things there as well. It's a harder problem with less visibility, but we're working on some things for the things that are only living on the calendar as well. Yeah.
So talk to me about the scale of this, though, because you shared a graph with me recently about like how much of this ICS phishing is happening, and it is absolutely insane. It's like you said it reminds you of when a couple of years ago QR code phishing became the big hot thing. This is like the new QR code thing, right? Like, give us an indication of the volumes involved here. Yes.
So we have seen at this point it's over 100x increase in volume in ICS phishing. And it's very similar to, and the key thing, similar to QR code phishing was not a new thing when we initially started to see it again, and we started to see the uptick, and it started to cause a lot of problems. ICS phishing is not a new technique. It has existed for years and years. So what I anticipate has happened is that it's made its way into commoditized tools like phishing as a service kits and whatnot. And it's along the same lines as we were talking about the Anthropic report, and how it's only a matter of time before more and more of these make it into commoditized services that you can just buy as a random criminal Joe off the street and not have to build and innovate yourself.
Yeah, and we'd have to say too, one of the powerful things about Sublime is that it is a very flexible platform which allows you to quickly and rapidly respond to big trends like this, which has been a bit of a challenge for some of the commodity providers.
That is one of just like the fundamental thesis of Sublime, is that the threat landscape is going to continue to rapidly evolve, and you'll see new techniques, and you'll see more and more attacks at higher speed and velocity and scale and sophistication, and you have to be able to adapt rapidly, whether it's be able to like re-educate the agents that you have making decisions, or the core of the detection pipeline, or these things. It's how we built Sublime to be able to adapt to the moving threat landscape.
Yeah, and as I mentioned at the intro there, Sublime has absolutely gone berserk. I think you've gone from like 10 or 20 staff when you first started out with us to like 200 now. You've just closed a $150 million Series C. So yes, it seems to be an approach that is being validated. Josh Camdew, thank you so much for joining me to talk about that. It's very interesting stuff.
Thanks, Pat.
That was Josh Camdew from Sublime Security there. Big thanks to him for that, and big thanks to Sublime Security for being a Risky Business sponsor. And that is it for the show for 2025. I do hope you enjoyed it. I do hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed putting it together for you. Big thanks to the entire Risky Business crew. So we got Tom Uren, Catalin Kimpanu, Adam Boileau, Amberly Jack, Tyron Ferrier, Claire Aird, just everyone, absolutely terrific work from all of you. And looking forward to working with you all again through 2026. And thanks for listening, everybody. Cheers.